I almost hit you up like an hour ago to be like, yo, Kyrie, do you have a fucking RC8 a quarter inch?
Oh.
Because I just got this thing that I like an interface for my computer,
Okay.
and I don't have the right adapters. I have some of the adapters.
We'll check it out afterwards. Yeah, no, I'll take a look.
Oh, I'll just order the shit. I'm not. I mean, you would have. I doubt you have that in your bag.
I might.
You might. Word.
Awesome. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. We're good. Let's see. Are we live? Yeah, I think we're good. All right. So, welcome. Well, first off, we're gonna say we're live here, we're live there, we're live there, and we're live everywhere. This is thebump.com. We're probably it's still 2020, but by the time people will see this, it'll be 2021. So I hope everybody had happy holidays with your family and loved ones. And as you can see, we're doing a socially distanced episode of The Bump. But without further ado, it's my honor, my pleasure to have a hero, a guy that I look up to and an inspiration, but more importantly, a great friend of mine, DJentrification.
No.
And the star of the show is really Scarface, guys. But DJents is joining me on The Bump, so it's a pleasure to have you, and welcome.
Thank you, Kyrie. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Hello,
man.
anyone listening. Hi.
So, yeah, we're here in the beautiful backyard, and how you been, man? You know, it's been a while since I've seen you.
I have no complaints. I mean, things have been totally challenging with this pandemic for me and for everyone. So, like, I don't want to leave that out and just pretend like everything is all good. Like, I feel like everyone's world's been a little bit upside down. So, of course, I too have been experiencing that in my own way, but I am ultimately, I feel good and healthy, and I have a roof over my head and food and those kind of things I don't usually forget are like really lucky things.
Exactly.
So.
You got some tamales from my mom.
Yo,
so.
I got dude, it's so crazy with tamales. And like this season, like my friend Liz came by and she brought us like a little mini pack, like a half dozen on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And that's actually what I just ate. And like, yeah, dude, just eating, like when I was getting ready before you showed up, I cooked up the tamale with like an egg, and like, dude, there's something so powerful about the gift of giving food and receiving food. And like, you know, I don't even like my friend Liz, she made these tamales and she dropped them off, and she's not even like thinking about it right now, but like there's something so powerful, especially like here in our area. And like, I don't know, man, like the holidays could just be so intense, like with like emotionally, psychically for people. And then like I honestly kind of like dread it in some ways because of my own thing about it. Like that's not, you know, it's not like I hate Christmas or something, but it does bring up like all this intense shit.
Yeah, it does.
And but having that tamale, and then now even more tamales from your mom and from your family, like those kind of things just will like, it's so powerful. It's like it's crazy how much that could like give you strength. You know what I mean? It's really something I take it to heart. I'm thankful of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes you feel like at home and okay and stuff, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, we're grateful for the little things, you know, and just food, you know, substance, but like you said, roof over our head, having, you know, our physical bodies, our mental health in a great state. That's what it matters. And I don't know if you remember this, but I actually tried one of your burritos at the lunchbox a long time ago. So I was like, hey, you know what? I got a bunch of tamales. I'm gonna bring some over to DJents. So I'm glad that you're excited for them. So.
Yo, that kind of exchange, and I think it's different because I was probably selling burritos that night.
No, you actually gave me half of your burrito.
Oh,
yeah,
it
was a veggie burrito.
It was what?
It was a veggie burrito.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that kind of exchange, like, to me, like, not to get all like meta about it, but like that kind of exchange of people sharing food and like that excitement about it, because everyone does it like a little bit different too.
Yeah, yep.
Like I know the tamales that you just gave me from your mom I've never had that.
Yeah.
You know, there's something unique about that. That person's like art and thought about what they put into it. And like, yo, I hope those kind of exchanges, I hope 100 years from now, like in here where we are, I hope that those kind of exchanges, that's like still going on 100 years. And then 100 years from then. And like,
it's beautiful.
Yo, 'cause 100 years before now,
Yeah.
this was happening. You know,
Exactly.
So I don't know.
No,
people
yeah,
are
yeah.
like, okay,
I
dude.
feel the same exact way, and I feel that way about anything. Like, even if somebody shares a song or a playlist with me, I think I've shared a couple songs with you, and I'm like, hey, I think you'd like this or something. It's just always the thought and the meaning behind it. It's like somebody thought about you, and I think it's always great. It's just the art of giving to me is what's always in the back of my mind. I just love being able to bring joy or a smile, whatever, to somebody's face. It's just great.
Yo, I mean, music becomes way less powerful if you're not able to share it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's still cool, but if you're just having to experience it on your own, like, I mean, it's useful and but that act of like sharing it and that exchange, like with music, like, I think if that's like removed from it, like. It just, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yo, that's partly like what's like fucked my head up with this whole pandemic. And like for me as a DJ and like a performer is like everything. I haven't like totally thought this out, and I don't even know that it's that important. But for me personally, like it's been fucking hard because everything with me with DJing was having these parties and like so much of everything that was going on was like this exchange going on between that I would get to feel between so many people and like I was there part of that and like so it's hard for me to get as hyped on tunes and music outside of that context and outside of that.
It's missing that energy.
Dude, it's so hard,
that exchange, that body heat,
all
the
that
sweat and everything. All
people
of it.
being like asshole people that I'm having to deal with, all of it. The great people, like all of it.
The ones that ask you to play tech house
or whatever. Yeah, did you see me give someone a hard time about that or something?
We'll talk about that soon because I want to bring up a few things, but I miss that so much too. Doing it on live streams is not the same.
Oh no, it's hard. I mean, it is cool though that like. It's just an adjustment and I mean definitely like if it's a choice between like basic like safety and like trying to like reckon with like this virus shit and like situations of like what like I'm happy to give up something like that if it means that one less person might,
right,
like
right.
even so in that sense, like it's definitely not the worst thing, but it is something to kind of
think about. Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's tons.
What do you think it's going to look like going forward?
I honestly don't, I try not to get too much into that frame of mind of trying to like predict or imagine the way things are going to be. I naturally do a little bit, like wonder.
Do you think it'll ever be the same at some point? Because the reason I bring that up is because I saw a couple things that I was like, wow, like I think it was like Ticketmaster was like starting, or rumors were that they were going to make mandatory vaccines if you wanted to buy tickets. And so I was like,
I've seen that too.
And I don't like to think ahead of it either, but I'm like, damn, like, is it going to get to normal or is it ever going to be the same? But it's a lot to think about.
I don't think it's going to get to normal. I don't think that things are going to be the same. I think even separate of the pandemic, things are never the same.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it's for me, it's never made sense or been super it doesn't feel good to me to be in that frame of mind where you want to like hold on to like a romanticized like vision of the way things were and hoping that things could be like that again, like
nostalgia kind of.
But I mean, I definitely think there is like I don't think people should forget about things that have happened or situations they've been in or environments that they've been feeling or people especially that has been around. But I also think to hold on to that, and I think that I don't know, I could get too like meta about it, but like, I've seen it where people reminisce a time period in the past, and they try and make it out like everything was all good and glorious, and that was that things were like more authentic or real. you know, this perceived like realness. But I also remember like being in times like that, and it sure didn't feel like that at that time. And there was also dumb shit and stresses, and
It's their own set of problems during
there was
that
fake
time,
shit then too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I mean, I see that with, so yeah, it's a trip with that. I mean, that's partly why like I just have no interest in like people like saying like this is a real time period, or like I mean, you definitely can see that with hip hop where there's people that are like, you know, I only listen to like real hip hop.
Yeah.
Meaning like hip hop that they identify with their youth as this. And I mean, I do think that there is something to be said for people that really study like hip hop music and the way things were being done, and maybe different ways of approaching like lyrical artistry and shit with rhyming and stuff. But like to imagine that there's not people now, or to like close your eyes to like the creativity and expression of shit going on now is a mistake, I think, too, you know? So
and it goes, I think it goes with like everything. I feel like there are people that I've met who are like, oh, the Beatles in the 60s were the ultimate age of music. And then
definitely
even with hip hop, you know, I remember being on forums where people would say, well, I was a Rum DMC guy. That Wu-Tang Clan stuff is whatever.
That's wild.
It's gibberish.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy to
That's
think
crazy.
about?
That's like going way back there, like, and then you go back behind them, and what you got people that are
and then
like,
and then now like people are like, oh, well, that Tupac stuff is great, and then I don't mess with the new stuff, and then it keeps happening. I can see that,
and that definitely is not. That's definitely not like a hip hop thing. That's like a music
in general
music thing. Yeah, you probably got that with a classical music.
Oh
people,
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
They're just like, oh.
And I just at that point it's like arguing with the wall. I'm like, hey, you like what you like, you know what? More power to you, you know.
Totally.
But going back to, we're talking about sharing music, and I always start off by asking people like what their first exposure to music was. But I saw that your parents used to got you into Bollywood music, right?
That's true. That's so cool. Where did you were somehow listening to some interview and I said this or some
I did
shit?
my research. You know?
Well, that's cool. That's cool. That I'm honored that you would even like ask about that, and that. But for sure, yeah, my mom and my dad, they definitely somehow, they. So, I mean, there's a bit to it, but definitely, yeah, they were bumping like a bit of Bollywood, and yeah, like there's like people like Lata Mangeshkar, this famous singer from there. She actually holds the record, where she held the record for like most recordings that a human has ever made on Earth. At a certain point, I don't know if she still holds that title, but she did. But she's a singer from India. But yeah, my dad especially is just crazy into Bollywood, and also just a lot of music from many places. But he definitely is like someone who kind of studies, not in a academic sense, but in a lover of music sense, like studies music from India. The stuff that he's been trying to turn me on to now is I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it, but it's like it's a music that comes from Sufi people over there, and it's I can't remember the name of it right now, and it's I'm spacing it, but yeah, I mean, even sort of recently, my dad's like bugging me like, hey, you need to check out this.
That's awesome.
This stuff from over there.
That's cool that he's still putting you on to like new crazy stuff, and I can only imagine. I mean, your stuff is already crazy. I mean, I went to the Green Room party a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago.
Oh, the green party
at the Lunchbox. Rest in peace, the Lunchbox. But
Lunchbox is still, they're just doing printing now.
Yeah. Did you see that? So I'm hoping things work out and stuff.
We'll see. Yeah.
When I went to the Green party there, I think the first song you were playing was like some crazy cumbia from Thailand or something. And I saw that you went to Bangkok, right? Like
a long time back, yeah.
What year was that?
That was like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
Crazy.
And I was really lucky to get to I was sort of still not really on like internet, like looking up music through the internet at that point, really too much. And but I definitely, like, when I would be places, I would like try and ask about records, and I did. I found in outside of this place, Chiang Mai, a little town there. I was able to find a dude at a place that just had grips of fucking records, man. And like, he was super nice, and like, it was just crazy because, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but like, we didn't speak. He spoke no English, and I spoke like no Thai. I mean, enough to say hello and thank you and shit. But like, sure enough, I mean, it was really sick. Like this dude fucking had been like keeping track of and taking care of like tons of records, and you know, it was one of those things where like everyone around you is telling you this is an outdated thing that's not useful anymore, but he's just like,
holding
no,
on to
like
it.
I still like this shit, and like keeping it, and like, yeah, and it was just really cool because I had no idea what music was like from Thailand before I went there. Like I knew that they had that they would utilize, like, I knew that there was some stuff in their music where they would utilize like reeds and tones like that, and that there was stuff where they would use like gongs and bell sounds.
Yeah.
But that's kind of regionally like safe to assume. Like there's much more use of like gongs and bells in that area of the world. I'm into those kind of sounds, but I didn't really know what Thai music was like at all. And I met that dude, and he had a turntable, so we were just going through stuff and playing it, and I was, I could not. I'll try not to cuss in this, but like I could.
Oh no, you're good.
It doesn't. I fucking couldn't fucking believe the shit that I heard. It was insane. The sound.
Isn't that crazy? Like,
Dude,
what you
so
didn't even speak each other's language, but you spoke through music.
Dude, and we're both just sitting there, just like, fucking
Yeah.
bugging out to this shit, and yeah. So I grabbed. From the little I heard, I was trying to listen, because the way that, like, a long time back, I basically started using portable turntables because I would go to thrift stores and I would see all these cool records, and I'm very visual, and so like I'm less smart on knowing the names of producers and knowing the names of artists and stuff, but I'm into like, oh, this looks cool.
The cover or the instruments or whatever.
But there's so many records that have like really cool cover artwork.
And they're absolute shit.
Horrible, you know?
I had one like that. It was like $1 record, and I didn't mean to cut you up, but it reminded me of just recently I went to the Zia's, and I was on my way out, and I was like, oh, it looks like Asian drums and stuff. Picked it up. It looked cool. Threw it on. It was the most trash.
It was
record.
terrible.
But it was $1, you know. I couldn't be mad
right.
at it.
So that's how most of that stuff would be. It would be like $1. But if I was getting 20 records, all of a sudden that adds up.
Yeah.
So then I got a portable, like a good little Fisher Price.
Oh yeah.
And so
that's
for me,
awesome.
this bringing this tool was enabled me to really be able to save money for myself, was the main thing. And then I could get a stack of like 30 records, and then I was could just go through everything at the thrift store and figure out like, okay, that one was cool but like, and I mean, honestly, a person like me that's like going through records by how they look, like I'm going to be missing, you know, like 90% of important cool shit, because it might not look cool at all. Or, you know, if you're just going visually, there's just so many different ways to.
And it's crazy because, you know, I found this recently, like when I find a record, I might go through the entire thing and I just like, just not feeling it. But then there's like one song on this great, you know, record. I think I picked up this album from this like group called Popcorn, and they had like this crazy breakbeat. It sounded like the Amen Brother break, and I was like, and it was just like 8 bars. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is just nuts.
Yeah.
Like this is just on this whole record. This is what I came for.
I mean, to hear that you found Popcorn at a thrift store, that was how you.
Yeah.
That's really good. I mean, to me, I'm very happy to hear that. That's how I found Popcorn too.
Nice.
The song you're talking about, like, if you could splice it in here for people to hear it. I mean, it's a really important song. It's like super corny.
Yeah.
But it's super fucking sick. And it has a little drum. It has a little drum breakdown in it. And the drums they do let the drums go into the front.
Mm-hmm.
And that song you could probably find like articles on that song and its importance in the pop culture at the time, which I think was in the early 70s.
Yep.
And it's a big deal.
That's
you know
awesome.
what I mean? That song. It was one of the first songs that was considered like where it was electronic music that was breaking
The
big.
cover is crazy. That's what caught my attention.
Dude,
it was like
there's
just
probably-
melted butter.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? And I took it to the register, and the guy's like, oh, okay, you found this.
Oh,
And
he knew it?
yeah, he
That's
knew
so
it.
He was an older dude probably.
No, he was a younger guy.
he knew
the kid
popcorn.
looked younger than me.
Dude,
and-
that's crazy. Dude, this shit came out like in the early 70s and people are still like, oh yeah, popcorn.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know, you mentioned that like like when I go through my process, I look through the cover, but I also look at the instruments and like the
Smart.
year.
Yeah, see, I've never been good at that, but that's
Yeah,
that's
and that,
smart.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? And then like recently, I've been getting into like Turkish and like Russian music. And I saw like some of the instruments was called like a timpano. I think is that how you say it? And I saw your great grandfather was a
Dude, you
composer,
studied- dude,
Sasha.
You're on some fucking Nardwar shit. You like really tried. You like really like researched and like looked at interviews with me.
Yeah,
or like
I
research
did my
me.
research.
Dude,
yeah.
that's so. I'm like so flattered. Yeah, my great grandfather
That's
played a
awesome.
crazy Rush.
Not even before like records. It was like the metal records, right? I think I saw that they were talking about.
Yeah, he has his music is on those Edison reels, those
That's awesome.
pre-record things. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. I'm flattered that you. I mean, that's part of like why my family, why I even came to be and born here in Arizona is because my great grandfather was like fleeing some crazy shit in Russia, and somehow through life like ended up here. And my great grandfather, he did live here. He didn't really speak any English, and his name was Sasha Votichenko, and he was a composer, and he would make music on this thing that was like a ancestor to like the modern keyboard, or but from like 100 years ago.
Wow.
This crazy weird instrument. Yeah.
And it's crazy how like much influence our families have like on our taste in music. Like my mom, I'm a first generation born born here in the States, but my mom and my dad were both born in Michoacan, Mexico.
Okay.
And so my dad grew up on the ranch side, so he grew up with banda, rancheras, mariachi. And my mom, when she came here, she learned English and she went to high school here. So she grew up like on 80s, like electronic,
freestyle and
everything
shit.
from like craft work to, New Order to like metal hair bands, So I kind of got that exposure to both. And they also, put me on to like, bands that were like Los Angeles Negros and stuff, just rock en español. And, from there, I just kind of learned to love and appreciate everything in between, and it's great to like have that experience. And when I saw that, I thought that was absolutely cool. And I know you used to make music on your little like recorder, right? You used to go around recording sounds in Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even
before you even were a DJ.
I wouldn't call it music, but just yeah. I mean, definitely like recording sounds around in the neighborhood and trying to record sounds at places where things were happening, and I definitely was like influenced from like some crazy stuff with like sound collage and sound layering, like more atmospheric sound people that were doing stuff like kind of connected with what like industrial music movement, but not so much necessarily even on like a music side, but more like sound collage and location recording stuff. And yeah, I would definitely mess around with tape. I mean, long before I ever got interested in DJing, I was interested in using tape recorders and recording sounds places, and then using multiple tape recorders. My uncle sort of showed me that like I mean, it's basically just that same shit that like nowadays it would be like a 10-year-old kid making goofy movies with like an iPhone where you and your friends are like pretending to have kung fu fights or something. Like it was just shit like that, like, but using tape recorders, because that's what we had was cassette tapes. So we would do like fake advertisements. And then
that's
my
cool.
uncle's like, hey, you could use one tape recorder and record your voice and then play the tape while you record with the other one. So you could be like pretending that there's multiple people and stuff. So like, it's sort of like, the most primitive, like multi-track like bullshit.
And
So
I've always
just
noticed
imagination shit,
Right. And I like kind of like talking to each other. And and I noticed that in like in your style. Like I remember when I first saw you, I think it was at Valley Bar. I went with a friend, And I was like, who's this DJ, DJentrification? Like, this guy is playing some crazy stuff. I've never even heard of this. And I remember when you would take like a record, I forgot what it was, but it was like the record would say something on the left, and then it'll be like, welcome to, and then Phoenix City. And I was like, oh, that's
word.
cool. I like how you were working with the wordplay, and then you would incorporate tone play. And like you're like making the records talk to each other is what I noticed.
Word. I mean, that kind of mixing, like goofy fun, try and make like a new message out of old. I mean, that is totally part of like a fun side. I mean, that is so much like through like hip hop DJing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you listen to some of these early Grandmaster Flash tapes,
Yep.
There's tons of wordplay like that in there where
Mm-hmm.
and so much of that kind of stuff, if you're playing around with, like for me, it's like playing around with records, but that kind of thought process and imagine like being imaginative with music or sound is not restricted to whether you're using a record or whether,
Yeah.
so like, but that kind of stuff, it definitely is fun. And like, and I think, I guess my point would be is like, if you're playing around with sounds a lot and listening, you're going to start hearing things like that where they would talk to each other.
Yep.
So sometimes it's like the DJ's job is to maybe be listening to hear those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about like it's almost paying attention, because the records will start doing that sometimes on their own.
Yeah.
If you're practicing or playing around enough. So it's like if the person playing with them is paying attention, they could catch that. It's not just like they think of it necessarily.
Yeah.
Like I kind of think those things might be happening on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever.
Yeah. And I noticed that, you keep it real simple, real straight to the point, but you like to have fun with it. And I know back in the day, you used to run with the Dr. Sampler, right? Like way back then?
Yeah, I got one of those from I have it still. And then I bought a fancy new one that I haven't even done anything with, like an idiot. I bought one from Moretta that I bought
The SP?
yes.
Nice.
But I truly haven't spent the time and used it the way that I could or should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did roll around with a Dr. Sample for a minute, and I would make little like beat. It was like a period of like a month or two where I was like just where I would roll around with it and like plug it in I used it just for like little beat looping and like sampling like shit off of YouTube, like basically kind of cut and paste DJ and shit off of it.
Yeah, set up some hot cues and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
I saw that, with the Pioneer one. It was crazy, like some of the things that you would just come up with. And even when it was like slightly off, it would just create this crazy sound, like, when you improvised it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like when you would just like turn the gain all the way up and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, that machine is interesting because it's like 20 years old. It was made, it's called Pioneer FX 500.
Okay.
And my friend DJ Smite first said like this is an important, interesting tool, but like it's a dated tool, and it's basically like similar to what you would have like an effects pedal for a guitar, but it's just an effects pedal for turntables. And it has not to get too like audio geeky out, but it basically has a thing where it has delay or echo on it, and you can turn the echo to 100% and basically use it as like a really rough sampler. It's like a 1.5 second loop you can get out of it. But yeah, it's a fun.
That's awesome.
Fun weird little.
Yeah. It
thing,
just makes things a little bit different, and just it I don't know. It's interesting when people use things outside of like the normal means, to just create something, create a sound or whatever.
Yeah.
Just kind of experiment, go wild with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. It's such a trip with DJ stuff because it could be so financially restrictive. Like how many people might get interested in DJing from being exposed to it and feeling something good from it, and then they're like, I want to do that, and then they go and they look, and they're like
$2,000 CDJs,
some shit. Yeah, super expensive, right?
Yeah.
And that's like so fucked up because how many people, but like the imagination is really the limit, and so like I would definitely, I don't know, I really definitely would encourage people to be like, play around. Like, if all you have is a computer, like, play around with, like, open, like, 2 windows of YouTube.
Yeah.
And, like,
That's where I
try
started.
and mix weird shit together, even if you don't have anything. Because, like, if you really got into that, well, then maybe you could save up and you could get a piece of equipment used. And but it's more important that people would, like, engage and play than have the right
Tools,
equipment, because how many people do you see that have the right equipment that aren't even fucking freaking out or having fun? So it's not even I mean, and this is this is applicable to, like, so much shit, you know, like, you don't necessarily have to have good art supplies. Like, you know, if you're, like, really hungry, find a way to do it. Like, it's not
exactly. As long as you find the means to do it and you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's all,
and one's going to lead to the other. If you're really hungry and then you're, like, doing it and you're like, I fucking need to have a paintbrush, then you're going to, like, find a way to get it. You know, like, you start off, like, painting using, like, shitty markers and you use them all up, but you're like, you did it, and now you're, like, hungry for more. Like, those kind of things. I mean, fuck. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even be, like, around or, like, alive if I hadn't had, like, that kind of do-it-yourself. Those kind of examples of, like, not being dependent on, because, like, through skateboarding and, like, weirdo art shit and punk rock shit, like, none of those kind of cultures tell you have to have the properly branded
guitar
fancy tools.
Or whatever. Yeah.
It's not about that. It's like you need to, like, try and do something with what you have. You know?
Yeah. It's kind of like reminiscent of, like, Jay Dilla, like, when he had his MPC. I mean, he squeezed every single ounce of that machine to just create some of the craziest beats and just sounds from just the drum machine. You know,
I don't know that much about him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had people around him telling him that that it was time to, like, move on to
they're like, you know,
equipment
get Pro Tools or get Ableton, you know, and even some people, some artists that I look up to, they're like, you know, get your head out of Ableton, like, just go out and create, you know, just go record shit, you know, whatever.
Do you know how to work with Ableton?
I just started, so yeah, I started making beats, because I've been DJing, you know. I've been wanting to do vinyl. That's my next thing. I've been saving up to build a decent collection. But I started making music on Ableton, so I just started dabbing. I've been geeking out and nerding out on that.
For anyone, I wanted to say this at the beginning, but, like, the way that we know each other is, I feel like, through Aaron, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to, like, I want to acknowledge our homie Aaron.
Yeah,
Rivers,
shout out to our homie Rivers.
Yeah.
It's your boy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how we met, and then
he knows. Do you hit him up with Ableton stuff too, or?
I was just I was at his house a few weeks ago, and he was just playing me his new stuff. That inspired me to go make, like, 3-4 songs that I just, you know, I was putting off for a while, and you know, I was kind of having writer's block. But then, you know, it's kind of I love that about the community, is that, you know, like, when I go see, like, someone like Idiom play or you play, and I'm like, I think my shit is hot, like, I made a great set, and then I hear your set, I'm like, I gotta go back to the drawing board. I gotta make something new now. Like, it just pushes me to, like, to do more, and, you know, I want to keep it going. You know, just finding that record.
I'm happy to hear that. That's cool.
Yeah, man. But I wanted to ask you. So, you know. So your name DJentrification came, you know, it was like a play on, like, what was going on in Roosevelt and everything with the whole bringing the culture. And, you know, obviously you see the landscape that it is now. Like,
yeah.
Like,
I don't know if I'd say what was going on. I mean, these things are still going on.
Yeah.
That's a small thing to, like, but go ahead.
So we were talking about it before we started the podcast that, like, you know, all this crazy stuff is happening, but, like, there's still high rises being built and lofts. Like, you know, I don't know. I feel kind of fearful that, like, you know, eventually it's gonna disappear. But, you know, I'm hoping it's not. Like, what are your feelings?
When you say it's gonna disappear, what do you mean when you say it?
I feel like the communities, you know, the people. Yeah. You know, because you've been, you know, vocal about doing what's best for the people in the community. You know, and I feel that, like, you know, places like Garfield and, you know, stuff like that are in danger. I don't know.
Garfield is absolutely threatened from gentrification. I mean, it has been. And if that's something that I mean, if that's something that makes you feel concerned, and like, I think that's good if you feel like very wary or like worried about. I mean, it sounds fucked up to say it, but like if you take life and people having a way to be able to live seriously enough, and it's important to you enough to where like you would feel concerned about gentrification, well, I'm happy, because that means that you value life.
I do.
You know, and it's I mean, I really do wish that there were more like solutions that were available for us to find ways to try and basically like protect like neighborhoods and people's like ability to be able to remain in their places. Like, yeah, I mean, my DJ name was like a play on the word gentrification, in a way, like by calling myself DJentrification, like I'm trying to like imagine what would be like the opposite of gentrification, and to try and imagine like what would that look like to you, like a city that's not being like rendered and torn the fuck apart from gentrification. I mean, gentrification is just, it's like in the neighborhood here, we didn't know there was like a word for this shit. So like we basically just saw the shit happening on a neighborhood level, like, oh, like they're like fucking up this, they bought out this place down here and they're putting in this fucking Starbucks shit, like this stuff just right around here. And so we didn't even know what it was called. So honestly, partly the reason I called myself that was because I was trying to force the word into print, like on flyers, and force it to have, like, it's kind of like goofy, but part of my thinking was like some kid will see a flyer and like learn what that word is, and maybe they're gonna figure out some sort of solution to this later, because we like I saw stuff happening like right down here, and it, to me, it was personal. Like it wasn't like, oh, I gotta do the right thing or some shit. It wasn't like that. It was like, no, what the fuck? Like, you can't fucking take our shit. Like, that's our you know, very territorial, really. And, but then I like went to those places and I was like, I heard you're getting evicted. Like, we need to like fight this and like say like, fuck that. And then, but then the business owners were like, no, like we can't fight it, because like they told us we have 4 months, and if we fight it, they're gonna like kick us out like next month. And like I realized like, oh shit, this is like kind of complicated. You know what I mean? Like the business owner themselves were not even feeling like they had the power to like actually fight it. Right. And then I'm like, well, okay, I'm like, I can't come into this like neighborhood barbecue place and tell them like, I'm not gonna tell them they have to, if the I'm like, whoa, this is complicated. And then they're just like, yo, they like sold it, like it's their property, like they sold it, like we can't do anything. And so if people are motivated to try and fight, it's like, if someone's fighting gentrification, they're like, okay, like we're against gentrification. So then I try and flip it around in my head, like, what is it that we're for? Like, we're for affordability and the ability to be able to remain and have places to live, and for people to you know, be able to exist within their neighborhoods and have some little bit of like stability. Right. How do we fight for these things? I mean, if I'm definitely open to learning like more, and it's just very hard within the context of capitalism, basically. Like gentrification is part of this machine. Right. It's not its own separate thing. And when it was first happening in the neighborhood here, like I was just hot-headed and like what, we have to stop that. But like looking at it in the bigger picture, like, I mean, gentrification is just it's like a function of capitalism. It's built, I mean, everything that we're engaging with is like through these things. And I mean, the pandemic is going to show this even more, of just how raw like this shit is. Like,
it's difficult, you know, and like you said, it's all in the context of this big old capitalism machine. So I mentioned earlier that my parents came here when they were very young, but both my parents actually they came to Scottsdale, like the south side of Scottsdale.
Yeah.
So when I tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, I grew up on South Scottsdale.
like 68th
They're like,
Street.
yeah, 68th Street, exactly. That's so that little pocket right there
I
where
lived there
Paiute
when I
Park.
was a kid for a minute.
Yeah, so I lived right there by Paiute Park in those apartments.
Dude, I
growing
know
up as a
exactly
kid.
what you're fucking talking about. By the
And that
canal.
little pocket is exactly what, when you were mentioning all that, reminding me of, because I grew up in that neighborhood, with a sense of community, a sense of I was like, wow, I didn't know English. I
Yeah.
learned Spanish as my first language,
Mhm.
and then I went to ESL, learned English and all that
Right.
shit. So I grew up, with my neighbors and everything. There are people that are from not only Michoacan, but there are people from like different parts of Mexico, different parts of South America, Latin America,
Yeah.
that little pocket. And that to me is like what I have fond memories of. But now, like, I go there now, and there's these condos, there's these lofts, or even the same apartments that we lived in, remodeled, and they're like double, and the
Right.
people that are there can't live in there.
I mean,
it
that
just
neighborhood
sucks.
is essentially like the workforce,
Mhm.
like neighborhood for
Yeah.
Scottsdale. Like
Yeah.
the people that keep all those fancy businesses over there
Mhm.
afloat. That's like the area where if you work in those places, like
Yeah.
that's crazy. You lived in that neighborhood, and
Mhm.
I've honestly been happy to see that there's as much of that neighborhood like left as there is.
Yeah.
Like Tacos Jalisco.
Tacos
And
Salitos the bomb.
America's Marketplace
Yes.
on the corner.
Yes.
Dude, these are like
one of my
incredible,
friends,
like badass little places
Yeah.
in Phoenix. Well, in South Scottsdale, but like in the valley.
one of my friends' uncles still owns one of those carnicerias right there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm still happy that there's still like a pocket there, and it still exists. But
Mhm.
it sucks.
I don't want to like give the feeling that it's like hopeless to fight these things, because I
Yeah.
absolutely think it's worth fighting. Like I absolutely think gentrification
Yeah.
is worth fighting. And what fucks with my head is like 20 years ago, like this shit was starting, and I was just like bugging out, like
Mhm.
responding like on a neighborhood level, like what? No, like you can't fucking do that.
Mhm.
And then it's 20 years later, and it's like still.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't mean to talk about it as though it only started 20 years ago. Like in
Mhm.
this neighborhood here, there was like a bit of like affordability. A lot of people say like, oh, that's the natural
Mhm.
trajectory for like cities and urban stuff. But like how I kind of don't think so. Like we have to. There needs to be room and ways
Mhm.
and places for people to live.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
yeah, I don't know. It's a huge subject. and
Right,
it's-
we can
it's
get
not
into it all day.
disconnected from a number of other like imbalances
Yeah.
and like horrors. So
Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to mention about, because, with the whole political climate and everything, we saw some progress with Arizona turning blue, some of the propositions and stuff. But, what are some of the things that you would like to see, going forward in the state, some of the issues that involve maybe the LGBT community, Black Lives Matter, or addressed, I guess you could say.
things that I would want to see addressed. I mean, there's so much connected with so much that you mentioned. I mean, I guess like, as a kid growing up here in the valley, like I was never taught like where you're growing up is Otham land, or
Mhm.
like Peeposh people, like that the tribes, the people whose land, like I didn't even know the name or the
Mhm.
word like Otham. I never even learned that word until I met Otham people.
Mhm.
Like the education, like they didn't teach us, and of course they wouldn't, because this is part of like this like erasure and like in it making it invisible
Mhm.
of where we are, like through like genocide and all this shit. But like
Yeah.
they didn't teach us anything like that,
Mhm.
and like I do hope that we could try and like learn more about where we are. I hope it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm sitting here. Okay.
Nah,
But like
go ahead.
I guess I just want to see us try and depend more on one another and like not look for permission from the authorities, whatever they would be. Like I want it to, I hope that we could like, as people in this area, if we need to do something, that we could like find a way to do it and like engage with one another and like, and like try and create situations and spaces and things that we need. I don't feel like we're gonna get like the acknowledgement like from these bureaucracies or so-called like authorities at all, you know. So like I feel like the more that we could try and engage with one another and do what we have to do for ourselves, like I'm just more into trying to put like my trust into my fellow people than some so-called authority that's gonna act like that's gonna act like they might care about the people when we know they're not. You know, like and I to see people like addressing police violence and murder of people like is good, you know. Like I think that I don't think that these things should go unaddressed. And so, you know, it's long overdue to have movements that would be like trying to say like, hey, you can't like keep killing us, you know. It's not something that's like brand new. Like Ferguson shit happened like 6 years ago or something, and like that call in the streets of saying like our lives fucking matter, like that came from the people. Like that's people, that was people like stating like like the truth, and it wasn't just an organization. You know, a lot of people get it twisted, like the statement of like Black Lives Matter is like from the people, and like it came from the fucking people like speaking up on behalf of themselves. And
they don't have one person that's like made it's a group. They don't even have like a leader.
I mean that statement like belongs to like whoever is gonna say it like with their heart, you know. So like, but here in Phoenix and in the Valley, I mean, I hope that we can like look to one another more for taking care of one another and seeing like the incredible like strength that we have through like all this different kind of people that are like living here in the valley and in the desert, and like kind of like a Sonoran and like regional idea or way of imagining like who we are, you know. Because the desert, it there's something about it here that is really unique, and this is like where we're getting to exist. I mean, I definitely the idea I have of like who I am is more related to like this than the idea of like what supposed country it is or state or any of those things.
It's not about identity of a nation or a city. It's about just being people. I mean, I'm into so I guess like I'm getting way vague and imaginatory, but like when you're asking about these specific issues, like I hope here in Arizona of different social issues and pressures and things that we might be facing. I mean, I really hope that we could just find ways like you know, outside of permission type solutions, like things where we might not, things that might not be legal, but they might be what we need in order to get through the next time period, you know. Exactly.
Like maybe it's going to be people in a neighborhood like going and taking over an empty lot that they don't own, but digging it up and growing a garden, and no one catches word of it, and the owner never even finds out, but people end up with all this like
Yeah.
dope food from doing this, and like no one really even gets in trouble because people
Yeah.
are being like smart about it. And then like some kids from the neighborhood are also like getting to hang out and fuck around in their weird playground thing they
Mhm.
made with like broken stuff that's part of the community garden
Right,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
not even on that's like not even necessarily like legal, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's there in that area, and like those kids might be like 10 years and they're in their 20s, and they're like, when I was a kid, like there was this weird fucked up neighborhood garden, and like I was able to dig like a fucking empty tire tunnel, and like
Yep.
they're all of a sudden they're like doing something like that. Or like
Mhm.
my friend Angel was pointing out the other day, like how much food we could have like from like public parks if
Oh,
there was
yeah.
like food growing in them and shit.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like just these types of like thinking outside of the box.
Right, right.
I mean, dude, and then like one thing you didn't mention, but it's just so huge, is homelessness here in our city.
Yeah.
And like people that don't have places. And I mean, it's just, we really are like facing tremendous number of issues
Mhm.
and situations. And as far as like solutions,
Mhm.
like I definitely am happy to see people push back
Mhm.
against systems of authority,
Yeah.
and not stand shit any longer. But I'm also like interested to see us try and further strengthen our ties and
Yep.
communicate and find ways to pull one another through
Mhm.
somehow.
And it's great that I think you mentioned it earlier about not waiting for people, not waiting for politicians, not waiting for bureaucracies to
Permission,
make
yeah.
these change for permission.
Yeah.
So when I lived right there off of 15th and Van Buren, I would see that every single day, the homelessness on the other side of the street. And I remember, I think right around Thanksgiving time, I was on my bike on Van Buren, and I just saw people back of trucks handing out blankets.
Right.
I know friends who are just, donating their time or whatever, or building little packs, and that's not coming from anybody up top. That's from people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful message to kind of convey, is like, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Like,
that
do it
saying
till
is
somebody
cool,
stops
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and that's crazy shit. Like there are like laws
mhm.
that will say like it's illegal to give
Yeah,
food
like
to
when there are people handing these
Yeah.
kits out to the people right there where they
But,
have that section,
Yeah.
for the homeless people, like cops were turning people away.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's crazy to me that it's illegal for you to help somebody.
Right, but that shouldn't stop anyone.
No, yeah,
And,
exactly.
You
So it's good to see
Yeah.
that. It's good to see
Yeah.
people risking, whatever, fines, whatever. But I think if it becomes a norm, I mean, it's great. I want to keep seeing that, and I think that's what keeps me going, is like the positivity of the community and everybody. I know there's people, organizations trying to protect Garfield, like that square mile of the neighborhood.
I haven't heard of that much, but I mean, I hope there is.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I'll send you the info. I think my friend Nestor mentioned it too as well.
Crazy
so
word.
yeah, so
Yeah, because he's right at the south. I mean, he's on the
Yeah.
other side of the street from it.
Yeah, my uncle lives right there on 16th Street in Garfield right there too. So, but yeah, that's what keeps me going. But going back to, I think we were talking about some of the issues, and then you're talking about how people have been pushing the change and everything. It reminds me of, like, I remember early 2000s. You remember when SB 1070 was a thing?
Yeah, well, of course I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean, fucking that's.
and
of
we're
course
still
I
fighting the
remember
whole
that.
immigration thing today, but and it's crazy to think about, and we're still dealing with it. But hopefully there's gonna be a push, like you said, from the dreamers and everything, that are hopefully get some positive change, and I would like to see that. And I remember, so we talked about your stream earlier, and one of the records, and I have not been able to find anything on it. Did you play a Beatles record that it was talking about a protest that they were here fighting the immigration thing?
That's cool though that you're listening. You're listening so well. Like I give you props that you like, because you're totally paying attention. So what that record is that's a record from Phoenix,
Mhm.
and they're sampling the Beatles in it. But it's from the
Oh.
early 70s.
Okay, okay.
So they just used the Beatles. They used Come Together.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beginning of Come Together underneath the dialogue.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you're hearing that right.
Okay.
And that's from some that record is a trip. It's from some huge like people's protest gathering that happened in 1972, and it happened at, I think it was like Firebird Raceway or some sort of big place just south of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And they were trying to have some sort of like huge people's gathering where they invited different speakers and political activists and musicians and people from a lot of different walks to this one huge gathering. And that yeah, it's a cool record. I tripped out when I listened to that record because I heard my dear friend, my aunt's like kind of like adopted auntie's father on there. And like he was part of a lot of stuff here with like farm workers movement stuff. So I was able to get her recordings of her dad from that tape. Or from that record, which was really tripping me out, you know? And but yeah, I don't know what you just brought it up just because it's interesting.
Yeah, because it kind of reminded me. We were talking about like issues going on. You know, there's so much, but that was one of the things. And I remember I wanted to ask you about that because I was looking Reddit, I was looking
like
in forums.
50 years old, right?
Yeah, and I was just trying to find more information on it. But I'm thankful that you brought it up or that you played it because I didn't know anything about it. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it's a trip to hear that because it's like this political rally recording.
Yeah,
they
and
put
that
out
was
a record
72, right?
Yeah, it's from 72. So yeah, it's crazy. That's like 50 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it is good to be reminded that that there is like a history of people trying to stand up for one another, like here, you know, like as so. It will be interesting to see
what that plays out,
how things go going forward.
Awesome. So I actually wanted to switch it up a little bit. I got a couple of words that I wanted to throw at you and just wanted to get your thoughts on what the words are. So did a little bit of research, but I just kind of wanted to bring a couple of things up. I'm going to start off with the first one. So what about Trunk Space?
Trunk Space?
Yeah.
Cool ass little independent music spot, right? It was right next to Bikini Lounge. JRC and Steph opened it alongside a lot of weird ass fucking music kids here in the neighborhood. I forget when they opened it. It was there for some time. It's still there in a new manifestation over off of 3rd Street, I believe, in a space that's connected to a church where they were able to give them a space. I mean, I guess what I would say about Trunk Space is they've always been pushing an open space for all ages shows, affordable, good underground music shit.
Yeah.
I mean, as well as like having good records for sale and weird, cool shit in there too to check out.
Check out the Indie 500.
Yeah, the Indie. Did you go to that?
I did.
Yeah.
My friend James World, their band was playing there, so it was awesome.
Yeah, so Trunk Space is just a good independent, you know, struggling to survive venue in Phoenix that's been here for some time and continues to be here, even though shows are probably shut down right now. But hopefully,
What about Metropophobia?
Metropophobia. Yo, Kyrie. You're on some like Nardwar. You're like completely researching the hell out of. Yeah, I give you so much props.
Thanks,
like your
man.
host here is truly researching like the most esoteric depths of like Phoenix shit. Metropophobia could be looked at as like the weird great uncle of Trunk Space. Metropophobia was and it means fear of a growing city, which ties intrinsically into like gentrification shit that happened years later. But Metropophobia was a really weirdo outside art space that was here, like probably started in the 80s, lasted until it's maybe like 96 or even later, possibly. It's kind of hard to keep track, and it was in a bunch of different venues, and this was basically a tiny outsider art performance space in downtown Phoenix that I got the pleasure to go to when I was like a kid, basically, and they would just have a lot of really, really esoterically weird, hard to find records, experimental sound stuff, crazy weird magazines from other places in the world.
Yeah.
And then they would host different music and sound related and performance related things. It was I would call it like an outsider, like experimental punk rock, like really weirdo, like cool enough where it's hard to classify it type of space. You know? And it was very open to the neighborhood. It was very affordable. It was totally not on some stuck up art shit.
Yeah.
It was also possible because of affordability. Yeah. Because the space was probably a few $100s to rent.
Right.
You know? It was a really good example of like a Phoenix like art space to me as a kid growing up. Yeah. It was, and it wasn't, they weren't on some like invader art shit on the neighborhood. They weren't connected with gentrification shit. Yeah. Like they were a functional weird ass dope little spot in the neighborhood. Yeah. And then later it ended up becoming the space that's called Modified.
Okay.
On
Yeah.
Roosevelt. So that was the space, the last space that it was in.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next one that I wanted to bring up was the 307 Lounge.
307 Lounge was a drag bar on Roosevelt. Yep. And 307 is like the reason you got all these motherfuckers trying to hang out on Roosevelt, but they would never know it because 307 hasn't been there for 20 years. But 307 was a drag bar on Roosevelt. And Roosevelt in the 80s and in the 90s between Central and 7th Street was known as like as kind of like a gay strip or like a cruising type strip. Yeah. Where dudes would cruise and like, and it was like very like open, and it didn't matter like I would have dudes try and pick up on me that thought I was working on the street when I was a kid. Yeah. You know? And like I didn't take offense to that. Right. Like I didn't get all crazy because I knew where I was. Yeah. Because that's the neighborhood. Right. And there was a lot of trans people and there was a lot of gay people, and there was like a culture on Roosevelt that was very like outside of the strict norms of like what's like supposedly allowed. Yeah. And so I mean I grew up being around there and being around like a lot of like street queens and like people that were like making their way, that maybe they even lived on the street, but they were like very creative and surviving and representing who they were like fearlessly. Yeah. Like like being who they were even in the face of like a society that like was so ready to like stomp on you or like
I didn't
try
want you
and
there.
destroy you for who you were. Yeah. And so the 307 was a drag bar that was sort of a central hub to a lot of the action that was going on down there. And there was a lot of sex workers, and there was a lot of customers as sex workers, and there was a lot of people that were just in the mix, and it got that was one of the first little circles to get kind of like attacked when the city and the developers and the fucked up shitty yuppie artists were like gonna come in and try and like whitewash the area. Like I don't want to like act like that culture is like gone, because like I mean specifically even in like a local street action sense, like people moved and like places that were there like went to other places in Phoenix and like a
lot of history though at
I mean what made you bring up 307? How would you know? I mean the 307 is like such an important like, so like now you have all this art shit and all this development bullshit on Roosevelt, but like all of that is like built
before it was the Roosevelt Row, and
I won't call it Roosevelt Row. It's still just Roosevelt Street, because it's Roosevelt Row was like a branding. Yeah. And like branding intrinsically is like tied in with like making something marketable. Right. And that making something marketable is tied in with it becoming unaffordable.
Yeah, everything
And
that we just
So
talked
it's,
about.
it's
yeah.
better to just call it just Roosevelt.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I know you've
But-
been around, and you
But
know
there's nothing wrong. If
I had to
someone
do my
hears
history.
Roosevelt Road, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
I feel like a lot of people didn't know the history. I didn't know. To be
dude,
quite
I
honest,
am not even the right person to be telling this shit. You
I know.
like there's other people that could tell
But-
so much a better, such a better rendition. You know,
But I feel like it's important to mention it, and I hope the viewers will get a chance to do their research.
it's just a long ass interview. Of
we
someone
could go
watching
on,
this fucking brave.
Yeah.
Yo, Kyrie, like, dude, I just really to be asked by someone about 307. It just makes me happy that you give a shit about you care about these are things that happened like before you were around, like down here. The fact that you'd even be thinking about it is
It's important. It's important to know what happened and everything, and it still affects what's going on today.
it totally does.
Yeah.
I mean, like you wouldn't have all this like Roosevelt Row or whatever. It's like built off of the back of 307 getting like that whole scene like is what that space was like really open, and like even like as like a kid that was interested in graffiti, that graffiti stuff was going on at the same time in that neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
And so like the first permission graffiti wall was in the early 90s on Roosevelt, and it was a place called Planet Earth Theater.
Yeah.
And even the fact like even Planet Earth Theater was like pretty like saucy and like open. Like they had like theater shows where like people were naked, and like that like all these things were kind of like that. There was like a openness and like kind of like it was kind of like almost a liberated space because of like affordability and because of people creating sort of spaces with one another beyond permission.
Yeah.
None of that shit, 307 shit. None of the action on the street was permitted. And I don't want to paint a rosy picture. There was like, I don't want to paint a picture that everything was all good or that it was all this like neighborly, like everyone, like there was people jacking the fuck out of each other, people ODing, people getting fucking, fucked over. Like, it's, I'm not trying to paint a picture that it was all perfect, but it was definitely more open.
Yeah.
And more, like accessible to all kinds of people, and also accessible to like the yuppie ass fools that came walking in to buy it up and fuck it all up.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And lastly, just mixing up a little fun, El Norteño.
El Norteño? I mean, that's a neighborhood spot, and like they're still around, and it looks like they're going to be there for a minute. And it's a Mexican food restaurant on 7th Avenue and Roosevelt on the northwest corner. And they've been there for
has never changed.
I don't know when they weren't there.
My parents would tell me about that place.
What's that?
My parents, when I was a kid, would tell me, and we used to get like burritos and stuff, the specials all the time.
Yeah, El Norteño's dope, and like they're there and they're like doing good. Like business wise, like they're selling food like out the fucking all day long, and like if I heard right, they also are somewhat in a secure place as far as being able to maintain at that location and stay there. I think they're gonna move into that huge building north of them.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
On the north side of the parking lot.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
And that they somehow like got the building.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
It's
positive
fucking
shit.
really good. I mean, because when everything is like unstable and getting bought out and taken away, when you hear of one neighborhood place that might be there still, it's like takes on an even added significance.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's dope. Your parents were talking about El Norteño.
Yeah, man, it's still the spot. All my friends go there. Cash only. So take your cash.
Is it only? It is.
It's
cash
still
only?
cash only.
Yeah,
So that's awesome though. But that's how they're able to keep it affordable and stuff. So
yeah, it's
power to them. Phoenix staple. And so I remember just to kind of wrap it all up, it's been great talking to you. It's been an amazing experience,
Kyrie.
Man. Thank you so
that
much.
I'm like so flattered that you would ask me to have anything to say. I hope I
No, it's been fun, man.
Word.
Like I said, picking your brain about music, about issues, about the history of Phoenix, everything. It's been a pleasure. But before I let you go, I remember, I think it was the other day, you were tweeting about you were mixing like a weird Pac-Man record, right? So I was at a thrift shop and I was just digging through the dusty records. You never find anything, but sometimes you do.
Yeah.
And I was up in
sometimes you do.
surprise, and I found this. You kind of took a peek at it earlier, but you didn't see it.
Well, it's like Grover or something. Who is
Yeah.
it?
So I wanted to give this to you because when you mentioned the Pac-Man weird record,
Yeah.
I saw this and I immediately thought of you. So it's Grover Sings the Blues.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know if you had it, but I wanted to give it
I
to
don't
you.
know if I have this.
I thought
he-
you'd enjoy it.
Dude, I love Grover. Was like my favorite growing up.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm gonna break pandemic protocol and shake hands to say thank you. Shit.
Yeah, I saw
has
it
a
and I
song
was like,
called I Am
immediately, I was like,
Blue.
first person I thought it was DJents. So.
Oops. Damn it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
This
welcome,
is-
man.
this
Thank
is
you so
cool.
much.
Man, he's just like took my seat.
I'm telling you, Scarface is the star of the
Yeah,
show
he's
today.
Scarface. What do you have to say?
We gotta say to the people, Scarface.
That's cool as hell. Dude, just the art is good. Do
Right.
you have any other Sesame Street records?
I don't, but I found that and I was like, oh man, this looks cool. And I listened to it. It's got some pretty cool stuff. I figured I was like, I think you'd be able to do something with it. So
Dude, it's crazy how many Sesame Street records there are.
Right.
I heard about a person, and all they do is collect Sesame Street records.
really,
Yeah.
God,
And there's like hundreds. They're finding like new ones like all the time that they
Really?
never knew existed and shit. Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you like it, man.
Yeah, thank you for this Grover record. Grover
Yeah.
was my favorite growing up.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Anything else you want to say to the people?
No, if you listened to this whole thing, you're a champion. And Kyrie, thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time to
Thank you for spending your time with me, for being on the bump, and until next time, guys.
peace out,
Peace.
anyone. Bye.